Hello everyone. Back for another round, I see. Well, I'm glad you're here because I wanted to update everyone on something that I saw that was really noteworthy to me. And I wasn't even going to make a video today because I just didn't see anything happening in the news that was particularly noteworthy and nothing out of the ordinary that I wanted to talk about. But then I saw something that really caught my attention. And as you know, I don't just make videos just to make them. I only talk about politics or certain issues if I see no one else is talking about them. So I wanted to talk about something that you wouldn't just happen upon this. You would have to be in the right circles to know that this was going on. And I've gone into those circles for you, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about as I'm talking about it, if you go and look for yourself. But even if you don't, it's going to be something that you're going to discover soon anyway. But if you remember in 2016 and 2015, one of the biggest indicators of energy in the campaign was memes. And memes, in my opinion, really were a good barometer about how much energy a candidate had. And the candidate with the most memes was the candidate that ended up winning. And you could tell early on just by the one sheer amount of memes and the two quality of the memes. So whether they're genuinely funny, whether they're original, you can generally tell if these things are forced or not. You could kind of tell by those two things that Donald Trump really had a very powerful and very unique type of grassroots support system growing from all over the country. And we're seeing the same exact thing happen with Andrew Yang, and it's happening on the same place. So the original grassroots where all this kind of originated was on a site called 4chan, specifically Poll. And if you don't know what 4chan and Poll is, it's probably best that you keep it that way, to be completely honest with you. And that's just sort of what it is. But just imagine that it's kind of like the Wild West of the internet, where literally pretty much anything goes, for good and for bad. But in this type of environment where you have a complete lack of any real censorship, you can find ideas in their most unfiltered state start to rise up in the common collective and the common consciousness. And what we're actually seeing is a schism on Poll and 4chan, and it's new as of the last 48 hours. And what's happening is a lot of the people on 4chan were very big supporters of Donald Trump and, sort of his political agenda. And now we're seeing a split with Trump and Andrew Yang. And that's very interesting to me, because once you have that split, now you're going to have the memes flying in two directions, because the memes previously, all the best memes were for Donald Trump, and there wasn't even too much competition for that. And now we're seeing the other side starting to make memes about Andrew Yang, and that's getting pretty interesting, because they're pretty good memes. Like, they're really funny. I don't know if I can share any of them, but they're really funny. And not only that, but in all the different communities, like the Discord chats and, different subreddits, not really too much of subreddits, but the Discords and on 4chan, you're really starting to see what looks like organic grassroots support starting to rise up. And when I first made my prediction that Andrew Yang was going to win the Democratic nomination, even listening to myself, I was thinking, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But the more that time goes on, the more I'm getting pretty convinced by it. I'm getting pretty convinced Yang will never beat Trump. That's completely possible. But the thing is, Yang has a really good shot at winning the Democratic nomination. I'm of the opinion that Yang is going to win the Democratic nomination, but he probably won't have enough to beat Trump. But he's going to win the Democratic nomination, and I'm going to look like a freaking genius for saying it, because right now, in some polls, he's not even listed. For instance, in the Morning Consult poll, he didn't even show up in the poll. He was not even listed as, other. He just wasn't even there. He was below people at 0%. And so for me to be saying that he's going to go on and win the Democratic nomination, it's going to take a lot for him to get there, but tomorrow he's going to be on the Breakfast Club, which is, you know, a big radio show in New York City. And once he goes on the Breakfast Club, it might have a similar effect to him going on Joe Rogan. And that's going to be a lot more grassroots support. The traditional media, see, here's the thing about the traditional media. Yang is too reasonable for the Democrats. And here's the important thing about Yang, and I've talked about it on my channel. I think that's a good point. But I think it's a fair point. I see where you're coming from. But the thing is he's not making his pitch to Democrats. He's actually making his pitch to the middle of America. So if you watched my video the other day about, which, you know, you may or may not have, but if you go back into my timeline and you see the video that I made the other day about it was a 1-minute video talking about the tech check. And the way that he sold the tech check was by talking about how it is a deeply, and he used these words. First he was pacing and leading, so it was a whole episode about pacing and leading. So first he was pacing by, how many of you people think that this is a crazy idea? And he had the audience raise their hands, and he said, I did too, until I looked at our history and found that this was, and he used these words, a deeply American idea. Who is he trying to convince by saying that it is a deeply American idea? He's not trying to convince the Silicon Valley elite. He's not trying to convince leftists. He's not trying to convince Democrats. He's trying to convince Republicans. He's trying to convince the middle of America by saying it is a deeply American idea that people like Thomas Paine was for, and Milton Friedman, and even Richard Nixon was for some iteration of this idea. So he's not making his play towards Democrats. And that's what's really interesting. He's making his play towards the same people that Bernie was attractive to. And the same people that a lot of Trump's, you know, the same people that were attracted to Trump, that's who he's trying to convince. And that's what's so interesting about it. And I've predicted that Bernie has topped out. In other words, he's started way up here, and the only place that he can go is down. And I think we're going to see that come even more and more over the next few days. Because if you see someone break the record for fundraising on their very first day, if he was a stock, that would be a time to sell. Even if he goes up further, it's just, he doesn't have the same momentum that he had in 2016. There's not the same energy, especially on college campuses. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on the past. Really what's interesting to me is the amount of organic energy he's getting. And there's a lot of talk about how this could be a astroturfing or some sort of artificial or fake amount of energy of money being put into the campaign from somewhere else. But that doesn't seem too likely to me. His campaign's not big enough to have astroturfing. The campaign doesn't have enough money to do that sort of big operation. If he has, then it's just, I would put the odds of that at pretty low, pretty close to zero. So astroturfing, I don't even, and you can't make these types of quality memes by astroturfing. I mean, if you look at something like the Russian troll farms and their memes, very, very poorly made memes. They're just not very good. And it's very hard to do that type of thing unless you're really tapping into original and creative types of people, like the types that are on 4chan making memes. But today's video is going to be a short video, and I thank everyone for watching and for the comments. And so I wanted to just give everyone a quick update, because I think, I don't know, we'll see how the Breakfast Club goes. It could be a real make it or break it moment, because as I can tell, and as I've heard, Bernie didn't have such a good showing on the Breakfast Club. So again, just sort of playing into my prediction that he's going to be on the downslope. He's going to be like he's going to be sort of like on a snow-covered hill in the Poconos, and he is on a really slicked up sled. He's just going to be sliding straight on down that puppy. He's going to be making a lot of money for his campaign along the way, because I don't think the donations will necessarily stop, and he'll probably still do big events, but that energy is just going to be fading and fading, like a light bulb just sort of dying and losing its luminosity. Whereas Andrew Yang kind of has only one direction to go, and that's up. And none of the other candidates are getting any sort of grassroots attention. None of the other Democratic candidates have any sort of organic grassroots support, because I would have seen it. I'm very good at knowing where these communities are and finding out different where the grassroots stuff is happening. That's how I predicted Obama in 2012. It's how I predicted, more importantly, Trump about a year before that happened, earlier than everyone else, which, even if you thought he was going to win it all, you were earlier than the media, because the media had him losing up until the final day, and that kind of gets lost. But I was before Iowa. We'll say it that way. So here we're a pretty good ways away before Iowa, but I feel pretty confident that Yang is going to win the Democratic nomination. But anyway, that's all I had for today, and we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll talk about how he did on The Breakfast Club and maybe some other really cool developments. And I'm sorry for the person who just joined, but you'll have to catch me tomorrow, or watch me on the replay. But okay, bye-bye. I'll see you all later.